when you don't look at your shadow and you don't look at all the things that trigger you in other people that you are in fact doing to yourself, then you are walking around with a bumper sticker or driving around with a bumper sticker and on your car that's saying, do this to me. And you are sending out that frequency. And so that analogy has allowed some clients to be a bit more open-minded to like doing some shadow work. Like, oh, that triggers. Do you do that to yourself? Oh, yeah, I do. I hate when people lie to me. Do you lie to yourself? I do. Okay. I hate when people disrespect me. Do you disrespect yourself? I hate when people sabotage me. Do you sabotage yourself? Yes. Okay. Okay, then you can't get mad at other people.
Ketamine Connections, welcome back. I'm Anna Krishtal, always happy that you're here and extra happy to share episode 44 today with you with Kristen Ott of White Light Wellness. All of those links are in the show notes as always. And I'm curious if what drew you into today's episode has to do with the title about that too muchness thing, right? So many people, myself, my previous self, not my current self, carry this around, so many people that I've worked with. And a conversation that Kristen and I shared in this episode was about the too much wound, the too much thing, and how she was able to find healing from that story, because it really is a story. It's a judgment. It's a perception. And she found healing for that in her first ketamine session. How freaking cool. And if you're not sure what it means to be too much, we're talking about if you've ever been told that you're too sensitive, that you're too emotional, that you're too needy, that you're too loud. Wow, there's so many different ways that this can take on. And what I like to think about with the too much thing is, okay, well, the counterpart to too much is not enough. And in my own mind, I like to remember that if you have these guardrails between too much and not enough, then you're probably a perfectionist like I used to be, and you're going for that bullseye spot on thing. And how cool is it that Kristen was able to find healing from this story in her first ketamine session? And I love how this conversation unfolded because she brought forth the conversation that healing that wound lived in her body and lived in her subconscious mind. So the first thing that she mentioned after finding healing in her first ketamine session from this story was that she made changes. And this is something that we get into in the episode today. We talk about all of the things around the ketamine journey. We spent very little time talking about ketamine itself. And that is a conversation that I'm most passionate bringing to the show, is that it's not just about the ketamine, it's about all of the support around it, right? The preparation, why I developed the ketamine preparation protocol, the integration, the subconscious hacks that we get into this episode that allow you to make integration as a part of your day, as opposed to this perfectionist thing. I talk about my own story about how I used to have a multiple hour practice in that sense of perfectionist, of journaling, meditation, gratitude, time outside, how I used to build my whole life around this, and how honestly it ended up not being great for me. And I tell a really fun story with that. And that led us down a path of talking about ways that you can weave integration into your daily life, ways that you can put down the phone and take a few breaths, where you can sit in silence for just a few minutes. These are all practices that allow you to connect with yourself, because there's a power to presence. There's an intelligence to your emotions, and there's even gifts in those things that piss you off. And those are all things that we get into the episode today that I'm so excited for you to hear, because I was so grateful how many different types of integration practices we covered in this episode, and how they're all these really attainable ways to integrate practices into your day. It actually really surprised me how this conversation led us to this conclusion, this punchline of this episode of trusting yourself. And that is something that, again, if you're carrying around the wound of too much or not enough, it's hard to trust yourself. So I hope that you find this conversation really fulfilling and really nourishing to those parts of you that maybe you're having trouble loving and integrating and accepting. And whether you are already walking the healing path and integrating and doing the work, or you're not even sure what doing the work means, this episode is for you. There's so many nuggets of wisdom in this episode. I'm so excited for you to hear it. Let's dive into today's show. If you're listening to this show, I already know something about you. I know that you care about doing this work well. You're not just here for an experience, you are here for real, lasting change. So let me ask you, how are you ever going to get the transformation you want from ketamine if you aren't clear about what to expect? The only way to make sure that ketamine actually works for you is to get clear on how the mind works and how ketamine interacts with your brain, the rules of psychedelic use so you don't make the same mistake I did, and how to be prepared for anything. And yes, I mean anything. And those questions only get answered when you follow a solid preparation protocol. Unfortunately, most clinics don't offer this up. Maybe they refer you to a therapist, but most therapists don't understand subconscious work or psychedelic work. And with anxiety, ketamine can only do so much. However, I also have good news. That is exactly why I created the ketamine preparation protocol. It is a simple 3-step process to help you feel safe, supported, ready, and yes, able to trust the process so that your journey is powerful and life-changing, not left up to chance. Go ahead and visit the link in the show notes and get yourself prepared, whether you've already started ketamine or are going to soon. All right, back to the show. We are live. Kristen Ott from White Light Wellness. Welcome to Ketamine Connections.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so excited you're here. We just had a whole journey in the pre-recording that now exists in the ether because it was not anywhere but within us. And I mentioned that we start every interview with the same question. If you can go back and tell the you before you started all this anything, what would you say to her?
That your emotional sensitivity is a gift. I've seen it as a curse for a really long time.
That was my question of like, what was she thinking? She thought it was a curse.
Yeah, that it was not good.
Yeah, not good. How?
It made people reject me. It made people uncomfortable. It was too much.
I was going to say the proverbial too much, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a saying that came into my life when I was like healing my too muchness, like that wound.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, what is it? You're only as needy as your unmet needs.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And so I've been sitting with that recently in a relationship transition and just thinking about how, okay, like what are like the needs that I have? And because if we're speaking different languages, right, like we could talk love languages, we could talk any language, right? So it's like if I'm in my too muchness and I need something and it's not met, it's just going to build that too muchness bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it makes me think of like when you're like rolling a snowball. Like where the energy behind the snowball just keeps getting greater and greater, that it makes something bigger and bigger.
Right. And it just like literally the verb snowballs.
I love that. I'm going to use that analogy in a ketamine session.
I love it.
It just came.
Yeah, it just came. So you have this wound of too muchness that so many brilliant healers and mystics and like some of the brightest, smartest people in the world have. A lot of people listening to this podcast have that wound of too muchness. What was the inflection point? Like, what was the turning point of like, actually, this is a gift? Can you think back to when that was?
I think it happened after my first ketamine session myself, because I think before that I was probably thinking it and telling myself that, but I was conditioned. So my mind and body weren't aligned. My body still felt the reaction when I felt too much. Whereas when my brain became really malleable, right, from like that treatment. And it was after the first one, because I did make some life shifts after that. That's when I began to be like, wait a minute, I don't feel these reactions in my body anymore. So that was when there was a connection.
And You're obviously a therapist, not obvious to our audience, but we've outed you now. So
yeah. Well, wait. I want to, so pause. I want to say something adding to that, if you can, where I lied. I don't not feel it in my body anymore, but when I feel it in my body, I've learned to do something different with it.
perfect. I definitely want to hear that, but it's just for our audience, informing you that like some of our audience might not even know of like, oh, I have a somatic response to input, right? Like trigger, impulse, response. And so that's so brilliant of you to have noticed that that was in your body and then offer yourself this corrective experience of like, okay, I can feel the impulse, I can feel the hit, I can feel the trigger. And then the ketamine helps you make a different choice, right? Like you're saying, you've learned to make a different choice. So you're like, okay, yeah, that wound is still there, but now I have the skill to reroute it towards a different output. I don't need to go into the drama. I call it the drama llama parade, actually. Like I often talk about like this path that I'm on, my spiritual path, my healing path is the path of becoming less dramatic, because I know with my wounding, if something like hit my wound and then it's like tears and it's, arms flailing and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe you said this. I can't believe I'm feeling this. I can't, it's just like the drama llama parade is like parading through my mind and my life. Whereas now it's like what you're saying, right? It's like, oh, that hit my core wound or that hit my wounding. Okay, I can make a different choice. I don't have to get dramatic. I could just like be with it and then reroute it, which is so healing.
It began when I was able to kind of let go of my ego and, just because something hit my wound and I felt, because I had a client call it once a fatal flaw. Like every amazing thing about someone also has, a dark side, right? So everything's light and dark. So, okay, we have this amazing gift. This gift can have a dark side. The dark side is emotional regulation and struggles doing it. And so until I was able to allow myself to experience the feeling of calm when something like hit me and kind of look at my shadow in order to do so. Because everybody is just a projection of your reality. So in looking at my shadow, I'm like, okay, I'm ashamed of myself. I'm ashamed of this emotion. I'm ashamed or I'm feeling rejected. And so, we have this perception that, everything that triggers us is exactly what we do to ourselves. So I had a look like, oh, I'm rejecting myself. I'm self-sabotaging myself. Then it takes away that power when you acknowledge you're doing it to yourself. And so it won't bother you anymore if you begin to show yourself some love, some compassion, stop your self sabotage, stop the drama, because that ultimately is what perpetuates the whole problem and again fuels the snowball because you're afraid to look at your own shame. And so it gets larger and larger. And so when I was able to look within, and that's what I think ketamine is why it's so amazing, then I can acknowledge my own difficult emotions that I didn't want to sit with. And then kind of, it lost power over me.
You're so spot on. I want to say 100 things at once right now, right? It's like the Wizard of Oz. You pull back the curtain and you see the mechanisms that are driving it. And my background is hypnotherapy. I started as a hypnotherapist in 2018, and it blew my mind that something as simple, right? Simple is not easy, but something as simple as shining light into the shadow transforms everything, right? And then you see it as, oh, this caretaker, this childhood experience, whatever it is, taught me to react this way. And now I'm doing it to myself. Oh, okay. I can resource myself to make different choices. I can learn skills to reroute this patterning. But before that, it feels like, right, Carl Jung, right? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And you're like, oh, I'm fated for this. I'm fated. I'm fated to be too much, like fatal flaw, like you said, right? And it's just like, yeah. And Carl Jung too did so much with the shadow and the light. And it's like, if when we look at anything in the universe, anything that exists in reality, there is the shadow element and there's the light element. So if you're like in your shadow, just like how can you take little small steps to go towards the light on the same spectrum?
Exactly. You're just going to keep projecting shame and blame. I saw this video. It was hilarious, a little like reel or whatnot. And hopefully it's okay to say this, but the daughter's playing an April Fool's prank on her mom, right? And she posts on the back of her car, like, give me the finger when you drive by and beep, right? And the mom's like, why? What is happening? Why is everybody so angry today? What's everybody's problem? Like she's freaking out. And that like prompted me to have this like idea of like, that is a perfect example of how we project our own reality. I'm like, when you don't look at your shadow and you don't look at all the things that trigger you in other people that you are in fact doing to yourself, then you are walking around with a bumper sticker or driving around with a bumper sticker and on your car that's saying, do this to me. And you are sending out that frequency. And so that analogy has allowed some clients to be a bit more open-minded to like doing some shadow work. Like, oh, that triggers. Do you do that to yourself? Oh, yeah, I do. I hate when people lie to me. Do you lie to yourself? I do. Okay. I hate when people disrespect me. Do you disrespect yourself? I hate when people sabotage me. Do you sabotage yourself? Yes. Okay. Okay, then you can't get mad at other people.
Oh, that just makes me even more mad because I'm in this world, obviously, and I do this, and I just like every time someone like hurts me, right? It's like, oh, this is just like you're just showing me that I'm doing something to me, and like now I'm mad at me. I'm not even mad at you, and now now I need to go sit in the corner and like meditate and think about what I've done to myself.
Yeah, maybe perhaps that's why we internalize everything so strongly, and like I have to say, I cannot believe you said Wizard of Oz and made that comparison because I legitimately sat in front of my grandmother's TV in early childhood and wore that tape out. I watched it over and over again until I wore that tape out. It's just so ironic that you made that comparison because that's such a special movie to me, actually.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. The synchronicities, right? It's like the synchronicities are little breadcrumbs. Most recently, I started saying they're little rose petals because I like to think that I'm following rose petals. But thank you for sharing that. So it's like such a powerful conversation of like turning the lens back on yourself. There's a saying, right? If you point a finger out, there's like three pointing back at you.
Oh, okay. I like that too.
Yeah, so it's like you said this, you did this, you person, you, and it's just like actually they're just like you said, they're just a reflection of something within yourself.
I do. I always encourage people to think about that. I'm like, there's two reasons why someone annoys you, right? It's a part of you, you see something in them that's similar to a part of you that you don't like, or you see something in them that you're jealous of, that you want. You see some light that you want. So if they're confident and that annoys you, it's because, oh, well, you need to get more confident. That's what I call like differentiation of self and not getting entangled up in someone else's emotional experience, right?
Yeah, we spoke about that before we hit record, and I was so intrigued by that. You said, like before someone can really not start ketamine, but like really make strides in ketamine, right? Like we're not here to like fear monger and be like, before you start anything, you must take these 10 steps. We're just like, hey, like, how do we make the most of your ketamine journey, right? And so what you were saying is like to clear up the differentiation, the enmeshment, to do the detangling process. So someone going in, my interpretation was like has a higher level of autonomy and sovereignty so that when they're healing they don't feel those cords that are tying them to past alliances, to past ways of being, to like when you feel sort of like indebted to something, right? Like those
Yeah,
yeah,
like that loyalty bond
loyalty,
yeah.
exactly, right? Because so much of it is loyalty, and I learned that so early on in my hypnosis work too. It's like you say you want to make more money, but do you have loyalties to like impoverished family line?
Yes, that comes up a lot. It
Yeah.
comes up a lot because people rather self-sabotage than experience loss or guilt. They rather keep them, because I talk about this with my clients all the time. And this is where the entanglement or the enmeshment comes. And like I said, I focus on this because I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I do see things extremely systemic and, study the interactions and very aware of the interactions between people and the parts of themselves. So I love IFS therapy. And so what they're trying to do is they rather stay lower in frequency if the people in their life aren't doing the shadow work, right? I rather stay low at frequency because I rather self-sabotage myself and control it than allow my enmeshment with the other people in my life that aren't changing. I'd rather experience my own pain that I'm causing myself than grief and loss because, oh, wait, if I change, will I lose these people in my life? Or guilt, right? Like, how can I go better myself when I see my parent not bettering themselves? Fear of like judgment and expectations. And that's entanglement, is all this enmeshment in. Maybe I would add to my younger self that, like, just because someone else is unhappy, someone else is sad, doesn't mean that you need to be too. And it isn't any of our jobs to rescue someone else's emotions. We just have to like give out our light. And somebody could choose to come towards our light and, level with that, or they can scatter. Like I always say, like when like you shine light in an anthole, the ants all like scatter away. I use that analogy sometimes with clients and they're like, oh, why? Because the ants are used to the dark. And so it's just an interesting concept. And it's like, yeah, this loyalty to like staying in the dark.
Yeah, and it's also there's soft wiring or software and there's hardwiring, right? And one of the things that we are hardwired for is connection. We're tribal beings. And so we've outgrown like these little tribes that we used to live in, right? But like the hardware in our brain hasn't caught up to like so much of our being is still evolution is still catching up to our reality, right? So it's when people hear this and go, well, why can't I just break ties with that? Because I really do think you need professional guidance because you can't lead yourself out of the darkness, right? Like you're just like walking through the darkness with this, maybe shoddy compass. And for someone to just, you can't see your own blind spots. And this piece of sabotage, right? I don't believe in sabotage because sabotage to me is just those parts are keeping you safe. There's no sabotage, there's protection. And so you're rejecting what you want to stay protected in your comfort zone. And it takes a lot of skill to get out of that comfort zone.
Totally. It's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. I love that, in IFS work in internal family systems, they say the sabotage is like a protective part, like a firefighter that comes and rescues when that exile comes up, that difficult emotion that we're uncomfortable with. And like, they're usually like sadness, loneliness, fear, grief, loss, unworthiness, rejection. Like, yeah, that's a big one for a lot of people. And you try and manage it and control it. So your manager part, is so strong in trying to control it. And when that fails, then, your firefighter parts come in to rescue you and from that difficult emotion. And so I found so much that like when clients bring that difficult emotion to light that they don't want to feel and like give themselves some compassion towards that emotion and can accept that it's not going to go away, that it's a human emotion and emotions are fleeting, just like happiness is fleeting, so is sadness, so is fear. And again, not give too much energy behind that with your thoughts, then they can begin to finally like not be scared of those difficult emotions. And it really helps them like lean more into like you said, who we were meant to be. We were meant to be creative. We were meant to be connected, compassionate towards ourselves and others. So like there's so many amazing parts of us that people forget who they are. Going back to Dorothy, it's like she gets kind of caught up in fantasy, and then all of a sudden, like it was in her all along, she just like lost it. It's basically like a quest to find yourself again. I feel like that's what ketamine is.
It reminds me of a Rumi quote. Rumi is just like a brilliant Sufi poet. How does it go? Your job is to not find love, but to remove all the barriers that you've put up against love. I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like the same thing, right? Like your job is not to find yourself, but your job is to remove all the things that aren't you, the shame, the blame, the programming, the loyalties, the enmeshments, like all of that. Like when you work through that, like I love what you said of like creativity, caring, regulated, right? Like a regulated state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that comes up in ketamine all the time, like the word calm.
Mm-hmm.
The word calm comes up in ketamine all the time. And I'm like, yeah, we are capable of being calm. We are evolved to be able to be calm. We have a brain. We don't have to be in fight or flight. Our brains can't tell the difference between if we're being chased by a bear or if someone just criticized us, right? And like it's our job to learn how to regulate ourselves so that we could be like, oh, pause. This is not a bear.
Yeah.
Like a bear is not chasing me. I'm cool. Like going upon like evolution in terms of like how we evolved to be like more intelligent beings, right? That concept has helped me also like not harbor like resentments or anger or blame. Like I feel so many times I'm like, I don't promote family cutoffs. I promote radical acceptance because we are compassionate. I do promote my clients. Forgiveness isn't always a word clients are responsive to, but like lean into your empathy. Why are you evolving in a different way? Because in 2000s, right, it's the first time people could talk about boundaries, Before that, like that wasn't the case. We're evolving to be potentially more emotionally, and I don't even want to say intelligent. It's all within us all along, but like it's more acceptable on a macro scale to talk about emotions. And so I think society's, evolving in that way, which leaves space for all of us to kind of explore that and not to shame previous generations for what they weren't like they weren't provided that space. They weren't provided those opportunities to hear that. And when you can empathy, again, forgiveness is a word that's often rejected. I wonder why. But anyway, that when you can have empathy for why you felt hurt by people, like why they became the way they were, then you can let it go easier.
With the forgiveness piece, I think what gets really confused and muddled is that people often think that I forgive you, I'm saying that what you did was okay. And that's not it. Like one of my teachers early on said, not forgiving is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. It's like the forgiveness is an act of self-love of just like, it doesn't mean that it's okay. It doesn't mean that you need to relate to them as if it is okay. Like you can change your behavior with people depending on how they're treating you, right? As you clean up your side of the street and you're not like projecting out. But it's really the forgiveness piece is it's like a closing of the chapter, right? Like one of the things that the nervous system is always looking for is to complete a stress cycle. It with lacking forgiveness is not completing the stress cycle. You're leaving that loop open. It's like leaving a tab permanently open on your laptop. It's going to slow it down.
Yeah. Well, now I'm going to start closing all my tabs when I'm not using them. I always feel like there's a million tabs open in my brain. I always use that analogy. No, I love that. It's so true. And as you're saying that, you're right. Clients have articulated that. And that makes a lot of sense. And I like the idea of like drinking poison. That's really powerful because it is like anger just grows in your bones. Resentment grows in your bones and fear just feeds, lower frequency. Something I do often, because I notice a lot of my clients are like highly perceptive individuals, right? That are often like pathologized and kind of contributes to that snowball effect. But when they see themselves as just like highly perceptive and, shift their narrative about themselves a bit, they can kind of embrace their senses again. And I think ketamine like allows for space to kind of get back in touch with your senses too. So much sensory work I find to be beneficial, like guided imagery, having individuals lean into like, what can you envision? If shame is a color, what color is it? If it is a scent, what does that smell like? If you can feel it, where do you feel it in your body going into like some somatic work? Clients will say it is a knot in my stomach, like of twine. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to use to cut it? What are you going to use to sever that entanglement and that tie? And, like I find visuals and kind of inducing a sensory experience gets them back in touch with their like highly perceptive self.
How do you find with this population, right? What I'm hearing is a journey back to trusting yourself, right? A journey to like being able to, because there's so much like stress, anxiety, worry, like all of these like pathologized states that you're talking about. They have really real repercussions in the brain, right? It's like narrow focus. You can't really like, if you're talking about creativity is open focus, stress is narrow focus. So for someone to be like, oh, I feel a knot in my stomach and I trust that that's real, even though obviously we're using imagery, we're using imagination and things like that to explain something that is real, because we can only understand something we can explain. It's just language is the language of understanding. But how do you find that ketamine helps people get back into that place of self-trust that is often lost in these pathologized states?
I kind of use intuition. Like I encourage people, answer this promptly. Don't let your brain over intellectualize this. Tell me it at the count of 1, 2, 3. Is this intuition or fear? Right. And I always say when intuition meets fear, it's paranoia, because people can't discern the difference. So they have to sit with fear for a moment and feel it, and then trust in their intuition, because that's the trust versus fear. Can you trust in your intuition? It's usually that gut instinct. And then you kind of question your fear, right? Is fear arising? Am I coming to this conclusion because I'm fearful? Is this mine or someone else's? Like, is this my anxiety or is it someone else's? Oh, the person I just spent the last hour with was so anxious, right? And fearful that, someone's going to sabotage them, that's theirs. And I'm not even discerning the difference. So I always say to my clients, like every single solitary experiential intervention that I encourage you to participate in, I'm trying myself. Like I'm so not trying to be a hypocrite. I'm like, I'm in the shower completely like meditating, imagining mud being washed off me, the heaviness of things, the entanglement. And so much so, you want to hear a funny story? I told my son, I said something where my son's 5, that I meditate in the shower. And he was like, what's meditate? And I like explained it to him and how it's kind of like prayer. And then he said, wait a minute. So let me get this straight. You pray butt naked? And I was like, yeah. Well, he proceeded to go into school and share that with his pre-K teacher. My mom prays naked. So I obviously had to clear that up and provide some context. But I was like, I cannot believe that I have to provide like clarity to this. Like it is.
I mean, I pray naked all the time. It's just like removing all the layers, right? Like whether it's in the shower or I like to go naked out in nature, but I do it responsibly. Not public
idea.
campsites. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting because I see a real connection with the external and the internal, right? Like shedding all of it. And I do the same thing in the shower, like especially letting the water run over my hair and just be like, like I say a prayer, just like release anything that's not serving me, like just remove anything I'm holding on to that's ready to go, just like I'm not trying to do like deep spiritual work in the shower. Sometimes it's inevitable, but just like, and every time I wash my hands, I'm just like, clear anything that's not serving me. I wash my hands every time I use after the bathroom. And I do it in between client sessions too. I go in and I wash my hands and I say, release anything that's not mine, release anything that's not serving, release anything that would keep me from serving.
Like little practices, right? Like,
yeah,
that's what I always think that patient, like, my clients and, ketamine patients, like I always kind of encourage them to let go of like integration being a task. Like they just need to be small little practices that like, oh, when it's an opportunity, like take it. When you're washing your hands, if you're getting a shower, like if you're outside, like take off your shoes. Like you don't have to be like, oh, every day at 8:00, I have to meditate now because it's like this perfectionism that we're also conditioned that if it's not all or nothing, then I'm not able to do it. And it's like, no, if you just train your brain to engage in these little practices that are detangle your energy, that cleanse you from, energy that doesn't serve you. Like that's all. It doesn't need to be anything extravagant. That's
exactly
what society tells us, but
well, our capitalistic perfectionist society that wants to sell us a solution. But do you want to hear a funny story?
Yeah, I'm up for one.
So I used to have a really regimented morning practice and I used to literally schedule my whole life around it. Like I would wake up, gratitude practice, morning pages, morning intentions, like time in nature. Like, I mean, it would take me like 2 hours and I built a life around it and I get to do that. And I started feeling like something's off. So this one day, and then I would ask myself in those morning intentions, what do I need today? Right. And so that day, what I wrote down was slow down. I need to slow down today. Tell me why within 10 minutes of finishing that journaling, I'm getting pulled over on my way to yoga for speeding.
I'm not surprised.
But I'm not even like, that's what like made me stop that type of regimented, like it has to be this way and I need to do all these things in this order, because what it turned into was I'm checking the box. I did my journaling. I did my morning intentions, but I'm not even mindful to it. This was a few years ago when I lived in Sedona, Arizona. And I was like, where am I rushing to? It's yoga. It's Sedona. They call it slow dona because it's so slow there. Like I'm not even listening to myself. If I write down, I need to slow down today, and 10 minutes later, I'm getting pulled over for speeding. I literally just scrapped that whole practice. And I now just I have what I do and what I kind of guide clients through is I have a menu. Right. And I just like, okay, like what do I have time for? We have a sorting practice that we do of like, what's like the biggest barrier to entry to the smallest barrier to entry, right? Like I could do a gratitude practice in my head. I'm grateful for the sun. I'm grateful for the grass. I'm grateful for my socks. I'm grateful for my bed. Or you could write it out and make it more regimented and just really, like you said, having those little touch points throughout the day to start working with the subconscious mind towards the desired outcome, the desired experience that you want to have of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I like how you called them touch points. And, hey, if you have time in the day for like a more extensive like meditation, a more intense journaling, gratitude, exercise, wonderful. But if you don't, then like don't set yourself up for failure. And so, like, it's more so like, just allowing yourself to have space, like the touch point in terms of like, I'm checking in with myself before I see a client. How do I feel? Put that bubble, imagine that bubble around me, protecting my energy, or taking a belly breath, because the shallow breathing is obviously anxiety. When I feel it, I know it, I become aware of it. And then I'm like, oh, before I transition from one task to another, hey, I might not be able to take a huge break that I think, I really should be doing a little bit more. But if all I have time for in that moment is like a belly breath, then fine. Like that's what I'm going to take. But it's like and that's what I mean, like about experiences, like until you put these little small attainable touch points into practice, then your brain doesn't know what it feels like.
Yeah, that's so true. And also, honestly, it's like I learned this from my yoga practice. There's a yoga sutra, right? The practice is to be developed consistently over time. And if we have this perfectionist outlook of I need to meditate for an hour, but then it takes us a week to do it, actually 10 minutes or 5 minutes a day in between, right? I don't have social media anymore. You can't talk about psychedelics on Meta. We got kicked off last year and I haven't come back to it. And I don't miss it at all. But I remember a time in my life where my mental break would be scrolling. That's the worst mental break possible. But putting the phone down, taking 3 breaths. You were talking about the power of visualization earlier. The subconscious mind does not know the difference between real or imagine. You imagine your meeting going well. You imagine your session going well. I do a lot of like subconscious tricks of like, oh, I'm so happy that this meeting is about to be exactly perfect. When I'm nervous about something, like, oh, I'm so grateful that everything is working out for me when my life is hitting the freaking fan. Just like, wow, just like, and the subconscious mind's like, oh, I guess we're okay. Like there's all these little ways.
And like your breath truly also like stimulates your vagus nerve, right? So then it's like, okay, when you take a breath, your brain is like, oh, I'm not being chased by a bear, because if I was being chased by a bear, I wouldn't get a belly breath. So coming back to your body. And so many people with trauma who are kind of leaning into ketamine for healing, it's almost like, oh, like learn to kind of disconnect or disassociate from their body, because their bodies have not been a safe space. And it's like digital addiction, scrolling, any television shows, just binge watching, and not being present, not only not with other people, but like not with your own body. And like, so the reconnection of like the mind and body has been so important for me. And 2 things: getting in touch with your body and your senses again, but also allowing for sensory deprivation too, because there's so much stimuli that I'm like encouraging people to like shut it down. Like, again, going back to the computer analogy, like your phone's going to burn out, your computer's going to burn out. Any electronic, we are electricity, is going to burn out if we don't shut it down. So sensory deprivation is so important, I think, in the integration work as well.
Amen. I love a good, float tank, deprivation tank. I send clients to them all the time. What's your favorite sensory? I guess it doesn't have to be that extreme. You could just like turn off the TV and close your eyes.
And that's what people, and yes, a float tank is, and it's also like an extreme sometimes. Like I had a client that like, yeah, we suggested it and he came back and he was like, I was out of my skin. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. And let's start small. You don't have the distress tolerance for that then. Like, oops, sorry. But it was good. It showed him something. He's like, this is, I guess what needs to be addressed here. And that's where the most discomfort was. So, all right, blackout curtains, go in a tub and put your ears underwater for a few minutes.
My
Your
bathtub
face
is my
doesn't need
happy
to
place.
be.
Yeah, my bathtub is like shut the door, shut out the world. Like I do so much spiritual work in the bathtub.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can get started on like authentically. I think I'm a little like, witchy, but I'm like, yeah, water is a conduit of our energy. And like, I saw something once where like, if you speak to water and with negative, like critical, angry dialogue, and then speak to water with kind and compassion in like 2 different cups and you put it in, like the difference in the freezer, the difference, I was like, wow, that's interesting. I do still want to try that experiment.
I used to actually it wasn't an experiment, it was just a witchy little practice where I would take 2 glasses of water every night, and on one I would put a little post-it of all the things that I wanted to release. And then on the other one, all the things I wanted to bring in. And in the morning, I would dump one of them out back onto the earth, and thank you for taking this. Thank you for taking the resentment, the fear, the judgment, whatever. And then that water that I would drink would be infused with the things that I want to bring in. I haven't done that practice in years, but
I was just because I was just reading The Witch's Way to Wealth, which isn't about like money per se. It is, but it isn't. It's about abundance. And like even money, our narrative on money being off as well. Like you shouldn't like want abundance, but it's like money's just energy. Money's a tool. It's a tool. It's a tool to, just like a hammer, she describes, which I loved her analogy. Just like a hammer, you could build something beautiful with a hammer, or you could kill someone with a hammer. And it's like, it's the same thing. It's what your intention behind what you want to do with that tool. And I love that because I'm all about like creating abundance versus wealth, if that makes sense. But anyway,
same thing with ketamine, right? Yeah. Ketamine's a tool, and you can use the tool, right? Like the definition of entheogen, psychedelics is it's a non-specific amplifier. If you don't have the right preparation, you don't have the right intention, you don't have the right guidance, it's just going to amplify all the crap that you don't want. And then you're going to lean back into what we were saying earlier of like, fatal flaw. This is just how I am. It's just the subconscious mind it's a labyrinth, and it's helpful to have guidance on how to navigate that. Ketamine's a tool, but if you don't know how to use it, you're just gonna you don't know how to use a hammer, and you start trying to use a hammer like a drill, or like I did the other day. I couldn't find the hammer, so I used the drill as a hammer, but it worked out.
But it's so true. And that's why I always I'm like going into ketamine work, I'm like, what is your intention and what is your agenda? Because your agenda is what you want to control, and what your intention is, or the outcome you're expecting, and your intention is what you want to release and surrender to and let go. And if there is an agenda, we're like, pause, right? Because that's going to just not go well.
Oh, Kristen, this is so great. I feel like I could talk to you forever. We'll have anything you want to mention before we, click stop. We'll have all of your links in the show notes so people can find you. Any closing remarks or final words of wisdom? You've already shared so much with us.
Just that, hopefully whoever needs to hear this hears this. And this is just going to be a beginning of a snowball of change, And so, yeah, hopefully whatever's meant to be and whatever's meant to stick to whoever that occurs.
And also, if anyone else is interested in having Kristen on the podcast, you are interested in doing more interviews. So if anyone wants to connect and talk, we'll have all of your contact links in the show notes so people can find you and reach out to you. And thank you. I love meeting a fellow witch.
That I'm owning. I'm owning that part of me now. So amazing. I think everybody who really knows me knows that I'm witchy.
Amazing.
All right. Thanks so much, Anna. I appreciate this opportunity, and really allowed me to take a risk. This is my first ever podcast, and taking a risk of trying something new and having a positive experience is so powerful. So
yay. That makes me so happy. You're welcome. Thank you so much for tuning into Ketamine Connections with me today. If this episode supported you, the best way to say thank you is by sharing it or leaving a review. And if you're enjoying the show and you want to connect more, I would love to see you on my newsletter. That is where I share behind the scenes insights, thoughtful guidance, and other parts of your ketamine journey. Never spam, always fun. And honestly, since getting kicked off of social media in 2024, it's where I share the real stuff. I share stories, tools, updates that I don't post anywhere else. So sign up at any of the links in the show notes, and You'll be the first to know when I'm hosting live Q&A or when I'm doing other fun things that are not available anywhere else. It's the best place to hear about it, stay connected, and grow together. All right, that is all I have for today. Thank you. Stay curious, and I'll see you next time.